everyone, and welcome to this episode number 25 of the ASMG TV Back Pass. We'll be going over the results from the Georgia Conference and the Premier from this past weekend, both in the North and the South divisions. Some pretty surprising results, some expected results, but we'll get right into it, starting with the North Division. We'll get at the first game that occurred. Georgia Impact hosting Portros FC. Of course, Portros FC coming in as defending champions from last season in the group. And Georgia Impact showing vast improvement over last season. They had a slow start last season, but finished very strong. And they've gone into this season with the same strength and have been really proving it these past two match weekends, with a victory last week and evening out their challenge with a 1-1 draw against Portros FC, a very impressive outing there. Christian Suazo, who was with Atletico Beaufort from last season, was acquired by Georgia Impact for this season, since Atletico Beaufort are taking the season off. Got on the score sheet there, and of course, regular scorer for Portros, Mark Bonneau, got on the score sheet there. So Portros may be a stuttering start for them, but I expect them to make things right as the season goes along. They had the unprecedented season last season, being unbeaten, untied in their invincible season. And this season, maybe a step back as they adjust and get ready for the new challenge in the group. And you do wonder sometimes if the formation of Red Top SC, the team in the South that formed from the Portros organization, could maybe have an effect of some sort in the availability of players for the depth of the club and for Portros going into this spring season. But last season, of course, it was a U23 team. But, I think there's well enough talent in the Portros organization to really challenge again for that top spot. So we'll have to wait and see another match week or two and see if they can right things and get back into winning ways like they were last season. But Georgia Impact, pretty much where they want to be as they go into match week 3 next week. We'll have to keep an eye on how that goes for them. And next in the North Division, we're going to go to the match between SSL and Pachuca, Georgia, a game up in Shiloh Stadium in Snellville, Georgia. SSL, who seem to have reset once again. They have a new coach there, Yusuf Saunders, who's taken the helm up. A few new faces out there, and they've started out much better than they did last season as far as stability. And so it looks like Bruno Kalanji, who is head of the KSA Academy and who formed the second team in this other division, wanted to really spend a little bit more attention and time with it. And although they haven't won a game yet, they have drawn with the defending champions last week in the group from Portros. And this season, or this weekend, they were able to draw again against Pachuca, Georgia, who some say is going to be a challenger for the division title themselves. Ricardo Montoya's men have been well coached over the past 2 seasons. A lot of young talent there that's starting to develop now and starting to gel. And so this was an evenly matched game. There was a referee controversy late in that match with regards to the whether it should have been a dismissal or not of a certain player. That has been addressed, and but play did continue on, and as it ended all square 1-1 as they shared the scores. I think a fair result on the day, and we'll see how both of these teams react in the coming match weeks as they kind of put together their challenges for the division title. And so the last game that we'll cover from the North Division is going to be with LSA Mustangs, who are hosting Atlanta Fire United. This was Atlanta Fire United's first game of the season. They were off last week. But LSA, who had a very famous victory against Scenic City in their first outing last weekend, get another victory on the day as they defeated, in rather emphatic fashion, Atlanta United 4-0. And it's really an interesting situation with LSA. We talked about Kalanji Pro Profile and SSL, how they're related in a sense. They become separate clubs. This is the same thing that's happened with LSA Norcross and LSA Mustangs. They're both in different divisions of the Georgia Conference. The Mustangs, many of the players who make up this new team were formerly playing on Norcross last season. So new team, but experienced, and a number of players who have already gelled together. And of course, you see some of the familiar names on the score sheet there: Juan Panagos and Xavier Diouf, who were standout players for Norcross last season. Carlos Orta, who I think is going to be one of the most prolific scorers in the entire conference. Still, all of them very, very young and developing quite well under Coach Mochila Galdamez, and he's done a fantastic job in keeping both of these teams at a high performance level. Atlanta Fire United are somewhat of a unknown factor in our conference. It's a very professionally run academy, a lot of talent there, professional coaching, but we haven't seen them play at this level just yet. They did very well in the Division I the previous spring season. Now remember, they skipped the fall season after their promotion was confirmed. And so although they did very well in the spring, they have had that time off, and now they're coming into Premier, a higher level. So there might be some adjustment periods that might have to happen for them. But for the Mustangs, it was quite the dominating performance. It was a game that we had on ASMG TV. You can check it out, and the highlights will be available as well today. But a great result for LSA Mustangs as they continue perfect, much like Kalanji Pro Profile, which we'll cover in the second part of this pod. So now we're going to kind of look at the league table in the North Division of Georgia's Premier Division. And as you see here, LSA Mustangs in pole position after a perfect start to the season. First two games have been maximum points for them. And they're going to be probably one of the favorites there. And of course, like we say, it's a new team formed, but not new players and not a new coaching staff. So lots going to be expected of them. But Georgia Impact is right behind them. They had a draw this past week as they continue a strong start to the season on 4 points. Potros and Soccer Saves Lives both in good position in this early part of the season. Both on 2 points. Pachuca, Georgia, who've played one game and got a draw out of that one game after playing SSL, as we just covered, a game that was on ASMG TV. And Chattanooga Red Wolves, of course, the Red Wolves 2 have yet to play. They start their campaign next week. A lot is going to be expected of them. It's a professional organization. They put their twos here. A lot of players on that team trying to fight their way into the first team that plays in the USL, a professional league there. And then, of course, we got coming up at the bottom so far, Scenic City, FC Birmingham, and Atlanta Fire United. Far too early for this to be a problem for anybody right now down there. Plenty of the season to go. Many of these teams very evenly matched, and so I would expect to see some changes of places with a lot of these teams as the next few weeks occur. So that'll cover the North Division, and now we'll get kind of into the South results and see how that race is going. Now for the South, of course, we'll start with the game in Augusta Arsenal SC, who dropped their first game against Kalanji Pro Profile, but gained a point in their second game here against a very strong FC Columbus Elite squad. A game that ended 2-2. Augusta Arsenal jumped up in front in the first half, got a 2-0 lead after an own goal in the first half, but it was FC Columbus that came back in the second half. Scored 2 goals, but couldn't get the winner after that, and neither could Augusta. So they shared the spoils on the day. I would say a decent result for both clubs, as they, at this point of the season, you want to grab as many points as possible to make sure that you're still in the fight and challenging later on in the season. Everything points to that. And we'll talk about the significance of getting the points and these victories and results and what that means to the playoff places later. And so we'll go on to the next game in the South that we're going to cover. And that was a game that was on ASMG TV, a game at Meadow Creek High School, LSA Norcross Pro. We talked about them with their sister team, LSA Mustangs, a team that still has the same base as last season, but had some players move on. And so there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment period. But again, Coach Galdamez there has a lot of young talent. And that's the reason they're able to do this. They also have two teams in Division One. We're looking to maybe even have them have a women's team in the fall. So there's a lot that's going on there at LSA. And they just seem to be going from strength to strength. However, on the day, it is Kalanji that really did the business. A 4-0 victory away from home for them at Meadow Creek. Again, Zane Hilton, who was a great scorer from them last season, got a brace. Kaylin Kalanji, again, another great attacking player from Kalanji Pro Profile, got on the score sheet. And also Demise, he's got a goal to add on for the comprehensive victory that they had on the day. So another very, very good performance from Kalanji Pro Profile. Probably the best start in the entire conference right now. They picked off where they left off from last season. Did very well in their game in the U.S. Open Cup against Chattanooga FC, a game they narrowly lost against professional opposition. And, of course, the big news there is Kaylin's brother, Braden, scored as a 14-year-old, the youngest scorer in a U.S. Open Cup in over 100 years. Actually, in the history of the Cup, which is over 100 years old. So really historic things happening with Kalanji Pro Profile, and they look to be firm favorites to challenge again for the division title. So we'll see if they can hold on to that as the season goes on. But there's a lot of competition for them, and they'll have to fight their way through being a target at the top of the hill right now. And so next up, we're going to cover Red Top SC. They were hosting UFA Lawrenceville. Of course, Red Top, we talked about the relationship they have with Potros FC, now operating as a completely separate club in a different division of the Georgia Conference. They're headed up by Coach Kenneth Fasahene. He is the former coach of North Georgia United. He's got a lot of experience now in the Georgia Conference of the UPSL, and he gets a very good victory against the up-and-coming Lawrenceville team with a 4-2 decision there. It's a good start to the season for them as they look to make a statement as their first time as an individual club. But remember, this team is not new. This is a team that played as the U23s for Potros last season. Lots of changes, I'm sure, that will be occurring with the personnel there, new coach as well. And so it's a good foundation for them to get started there. UFA Lawrenceville couldn't quite get started here, but again, this is a promoted team, manually promoted from last season from Division One to Premier. So a lot of unknowns as far as what they'll be able to do in Premier, but we'll have to wait and see as time goes on. But they managed to get a couple of goals out of the game, but it was Red Top that dominated play, and we'll see how the rest of the season goes for them. Now that we have a couple of rounds under our belts. And the last game that we're going to cover from the South is going to be UMA FC, who are hosting Angeles down in Lynette, Alabama. This is actually a team out of LaGrange, Georgia. They happen to be playing their games this season out of Lynette, Alabama. It's about an hour and a half southwest of Atlanta, and a beautiful facility there. But came away with a 1-1 tie with Angeles. I would say a decent result for both of these teams. Angeles coming in part of the manual promotion from last season due to the realignment of the Premier's two divisions. And UMA FC, who were a Premier team in the spring, they took the fall off. They're back again, professional coaching, great academy. I'm hoping to get their academy and ours coming up in our fall when we establish our youth academy then. But Coach Andrew is doing a fantastic job down there with the young talent there. We'll see how they do in the season after coming off a season off in the UPSL. But again, they share the sports with Angeles, and we'll have to keep an eye on both of these teams as we get into the next few weeks and see how they will fare going forward. So that completes the match results from the South, and now we'll look at the division table for the South and see how that's faring. Of course, we look at Kalonji Pro Profile in pole position, perfect on the season so far with those two victories, two emphatic victories, both 4-0. They have the best goal difference also as well in both of the divisions of the Georgia Premier Conference. FC Columbus Elite, they're in second place in a strong position, keeping the heat on Kalonji Pro Profile even after 2 rounds. Red Top and Angeles coming up in third and fourth spot there, in good position there. And just to remind everybody how it is for both divisions, the top 4 at the end of the season will qualify for the Premier Division playoffs. And so you want to stay close to those top 4 for postseason play. UMA FC just outside the playoff places in 5th with a draw in their first game of the season. We'll see how they fare as the season goes along. Augusta Arsenal also able to get a draw their second game of the season after a first round loss. And of course, Georgia Revolution were off in the second round. They'll be coming back next week. They have only the loss in the first round, sort of a bad loss for them to start the season. But plenty of talent there, plenty of good coaching. So we'll see how if they can turn things around next weekend as they get into the action more. UFA Lawrenceville, a product of the promotion from last season, coming in with the realignment, had a heavy defeat in their first game this past week. We'll see if they can turn it around coming up next week. And LSA Norcross Pro ran into a buzzsaw with their first game of the season against Kalonji Pro Profile. Coach Galdamez has a lot of resources there, a lot of good coaching. I bet that they'll be turning it around really soon there. And I expect this to be one of the teams that will also challenge for the division title, but a very heavy defeat to start their campaign off so far. So we'll have to wait and see how they do for the next couple of rounds that are upcoming. So that's it for the actually, that'll be it for both of the divisions, both the North and the South in the Georgia Premier for this weekend. And we look forward to seeing how things map out in the coming week with some of the teams that are trying to jockey for position. Later this week, we will plan on having an episode of The Spot that'll preview the coming games on the weekend, as well as set pieces interviews that we have scheduled with coaches and players from the various teams. You get a look at some of the behind the scenes goings on in the conference, as well as get to know some of the personalities in the conference. That's the goal here at ASMG TV. So thank you for taking time out to listen to this, and hopefully you are learning a little bit more about the conference and the league. But to learn more, just subscribe to ASMG TV on YouTube. Click like on the videos as well. That helps the algorithm and helps us to give you more features and coverage in this exciting league of the UPSL. So thanks again, and we will talk to you again next week on the ASMG TV Back Pass.